Okay guys, behind us right now we've got a Holden Colorado, and this kit fits the Holden Colorado or the Isuzu Dmax, basically the exact same vehicle as far as the back goes. So this is a vehicle specific kit designed for one with a tub, so it mounts behind the rear wheel arch on this side to the back section of the tailgate. So we're going to go ahead and install this into the vehicle, and we'll show you how to get this installed into your Isuzu Dmax or Holden Colorado. So we're doing this installation today on a vehicle with a tub liner, which makes it a little bit more difficult, but I'll show you how to go about cutting out the tub liner to fit the battery tray into position. If you don't have a tub liner, obviously you can skip this step and it's a much easier install, but we're going to run through exactly what's involved to get it in with a tub liner. So the first thing we need to do is just remove this tie down point here, and just our 2 bolts securing this end of the tub liner. So I've just loosened them already. I'm going to take them out. So this is just a 13mm socket. Basically, we'll get them out. And then just a Torx bit to remove our tie down point. Basically, we're just allowing this to give us more movement in the tub liner, because what we want to do now is flex this tub liner up. And if you've got a little tool laying around, might be handy just to prop it under there, just to hold it up so we can see under the tub liner. Anything that you can find, a block of wood or something. Basically, we're looking for the existing mounting brackets from Colorado or Dmax through the floor. So there's one about there and one about there. So we want to look under, find these bolts, and then we're going to drill a hole through our tub liner to find that point. And they're going to line up with our bolts in the battery box. So step 1 is I'm just going to look in there and find this bolt using a little torch or light. And I can see it's right there. So with a permanent marker, I'm just going to mark this location. This one being the easiest one to see, it's probably easy that we just mark this one and drill the hole, find that exact spot, and then we can just measure to the next one using our battery box. So let's go ahead and drill that position. So I've marked my position. I'm just going to start by drilling a little pilot hole through there. I'm just going to check that we are on top of that mount hole. Yep, I can see that bolt through there, so I'm going to go ahead and drill that out larger now. So using either a little hole saw or a stepper drill, I'm just going to make sure that we're right on the top of the bolt. Okay, so using either a little hole saw, I've got a 20mm hole saw, even a stepper drill, we just want to enlarge that hole so that we can see that we're in the right spot. So I'm just going to go through there. So there we go, we've got a hole. And we can see we're actually right on top of the hole, so that's worked out totally perfect. Okay, so just for your own information, I'm just going to show you the distance we've come in there. So it's good to check by what we did the first step, but just so you know, we've come exactly 30 centimeters in, so 300mm from basically the start of the tub liner, inside edge. 300mm has got us right onto that first mounting point that we need to sit on. So the hole that we've just drilled here, which has come up and shown us where the factory mount is, we want to line up with our hole inside the battery box there. So basically what we're going to do is sit that down, even though it's not going to go all the way to this edge yet. We just want to line those 2 points up. So we're going to line our hole there up with this. What we're going to be doing now is marking the tub liner to cut. So basically, I'm just wanting the length of the tray right now. So I'm just going to put my marker there. The width is actually going to change, because we can't actually get the tub mount all the way back home yet. So there's no point in us marking this edge, otherwise we're going to have a big gap. So basically we just want to get it in the right position this way, mark our edge, and then we can go ahead and mark basically the top that we're going to have to go to. So we don't need to cut all the way up to the top of the tub liner. That will all be hidden. It'll still look like a tub liner is in place there. So we're just going to want to cut basically this high, just where our tray bracket finishes here. And down the wall. There we go. Once we've marked that, we can pull the tray out. Start by cutting. If we start by cutting the rear wall first, it's going to allow us to get our tray back up against the wall, and then we can get our full line out here to know exactly how far the tray is going to protrude out. So we have to go ahead and cut. Now that we've marked, we need to cut out that section of the tub liner. So I'm going to use a nibbler tool. Might make it a little bit easier if you've got something like this. Otherwise, a hacksaw blade or something like that you would have to use to cut this little section out. So I'll go ahead and start making our cut. So you can see I've just cut the back section out first, and the main reason for that is I now want to sit the tray into position, and I want to get those holes in the tray over top of the bolts that we first located. So I'm basically just trying to get the tray all the way to the back to see how far I need to come out to cut the tub liner. So I'm just going to sit that into position. And basically, it looks like I'm just going to have to come right to the edge of the lip on this one. So that's going to be perfect. So we're basically looking at this lip here. So now I'm just going to have to cut straight out, right on that lip, and it should sit just inside, hopefully. If not, we just may have to trim that slightly, but hopefully we can get it to that lip and just sit on that back edge side of it. So next I'm just going to cut out to this point. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just sit it in position, see if we need to trim any other spots. Let's see if we can line up our holes. Worked out quite perfect. So we've just got it under, it's sat under the lip there that we cut. It's sitting right on the edge here, which has worked out perfect, and I can see our two holes through there. So there we go. You can see our bolts through these two holes. So we'll basically remove the tray now. We'll pull these existing bolts out and utilize them to mount our tray into position. So next we're going to remove these two factory mounting points. So you can see how solid that mount is right there. That's going straight into the chassis rail. So we've got the rail right along there, and where the actual mounts are bolting straight into the chassis rail. And where our other two holes will end up being, which we have to drill through, actually goes through like 3 layers of metal. So it is a very secure mount. So what we're going to do now is put our tray back into position, maybe even put 2 of those bolts in just to hold it into position. And then we're going to mark with a permanent marker our 2 front holes. So we do have to drill 2 holes through the tub, and that's going to be our 4 securing points. So just grab that tray, pop it back in to position. Okay, so now we can see our holes through here, our factory holes. Now that we know that they're perfectly lined up, we can go and mark our front holes here. So with a permanent marker, I'm just going to mark that position and then the back one also. Now at this point we can take the tray back out of position. We're going to go ahead, drill those holes, put some rust proofing on there, and then we can go and actually physically mount our battery tray. So now we're going to go ahead and drill our pilot holes through here. Now I will say, before you actually do this, it's a good idea to jump under there and make sure nothing's been installed in this position. So it should be free. Just make sure before you drill, always before you drill, duck under and make sure there's nothing mounted under there. So we're just going to drill our pilot holes now. Okay, so now that we've drilled our pilot holes, it's time to drill with our 8.5mm drill bit for our 8mm bolts to go through. So we're just going to drill that out. Now that we've drilled that out, we're just going to clean up some of our shavings. And then we can go ahead and put some rust proofing around our holes. So before we go ahead and fully secure the battery box, in this case with a tub, we're going to start to route the cable. So this may change on different vehicles, and we're going to show you the worst case scenario once again, but if it didn't have a tub liner, you might be able to just go straight to the front and exit the tub and go straight down under the chassis rail. Because we've got a tub liner here, there's not really any points that we can go through and get out. So our easiest spot is going to be straight over the back of the light here. Now, the tub is dual layer, so our outside layer of steel on the vehicle and our inside layer of the tub is obviously two different pieces of metal. So if we reach up to the back of here, back in this corner, we're going to see where this inner layer of metal finishes about this high, and there's a lip over there, so it gives us full access. If we go our cable over the top of that lip, it's going to drop down underneath the vehicle and come out at the bottom. So before we actually mount that into position, we're going to run our cable up behind the tub liner, reach in behind here, grab it, and that's going to get it into position before we put the tray into position. So what I'll do, I'll just show you, and it's probably a good idea because we've got two sections to this harness. We just tape them together. It will just make the second one follow the first one. So I'm basically just going to thread it up through here, reach in behind, enough in that it can sit there. Now that I can grab it, I'll just feed that whole cable through from here. And that should do us for now. So what we can actually do, we've got our tub liner just flexed away here. We can actually feed our cable straight from here. It'll go over this inner layer of steel, over a little lip, and it'll actually fall down between the inner layer of the tub and the outer wall of the tub, and we can actually find it under the vehicle. So I'll show you what I've done here is tape these two harnesses together just to make it so that the other harness follows the first one. So just through this gap here, feed our harness straight through, and basically once we've got our second one to follow it through, way probably to our joiner, get that joiner through, so that we've just got our straight harness now. At this point, we should be able to lay under the car, look up behind this rear light, there's a cavity. We should be able to see our cables and actually reach for them. So I'm just going to do that. So now that I've found the cable from underneath, I've pulled enough through to be able to reach it underneath the vehicle. What we're going to do is just manipulate this to come around the other side of our mounting bracket here. So basically, I'm just going to pull the tub away slightly, move our harness down there, and just make sure it's not getting pinched by anything. So sit that harness into position so it's totally free now. That basically is going to allow it to just run straight up through that point. So we've got all our excess hanging out the back now. What I'm going to do is grab that cable that I found, and I'm just going to feed it through here. So I can find the cable again, there it is. Pulling at the cable down the bottom, feeding through this way. We're going to get all of our excess through that. So there we go, we've got our full main harness that runs to the front, all the way through the vehicle. Now we can go ahead and mount our battery tray. Okay, so now it's time to place our battery tray into position. You can see we've painted the holes, just a bit of rust proofing there. As we sit the tray into position, what we want to do is just keep this harness tucked up under the tub liner there that we've cut out. So just as I bring it in closer, just going to tuck it up under there, keep it out of the way. And basically I'm going to go ahead and line up our main 2 bolts from the Isuzu, or from the Colorado tub. So I'm just going to push that down into position like that. And using those 2 bolts that we took out from the factory tub, I'm going to insert them into the back holes first, and we'll just do them up finger tight for now. So I'll just get that one started. I'll go for the back one. So we're just doing everything finger tight initially. And now that they're kind of finger tight, we can go and insert the 2 bolts through, which are included in the kit. I've got 2 8mm bolts and flat washers, so we'll just put them through our pre-drilled holes, and they're going to come out down the bottom. Now at this point you may need a hand from someone. We're just going to have to tighten these up, so one person in here with a socket and one person underneath would be handy. So now that we've fully secured the tray into position, we've got all 4 bolts done up tight through the floor, we can go ahead and install the battery. So in this case it's an 120 amp hour AGM battery. This is lithium compatible though, there's lots of different options for batteries, but what we're going to do is try and get all of our electrical cables just sitting out of the way. So I'm just going to tuck those that way, just so that it makes it easier for us to get our battery into position. So once we've got all those cables sitting out so that the floor space is free, we can go ahead and slide our battery in. This is quite a heavy battery being AGM, but I'm just going to lift him up. So now that we've lifted our battery into position, we can go ahead and secure it into place. So this is going to be our cross member that holds the battery down with these J bolts. So you'll notice on each side in the battery tray there's 2 little hooks going in there. So that's what we want to hook under. So I'm going to start by doing the back one, just because it's probably harder to get to. We can rock the battery a bit, get it in. Once we've got that back one in, we'll put the brace on, do it up finger tight, and then we'll find our front one. So I'll just lean over here. Okay, so I've got that one hooked on. So I'm just going to place our hold down clamp on and do up one of our wing nuts just to hold it into position. Now with our other little J-bolt, we're going to do the same in the front. So looking down here, we try to find that brace. Okay, so now that I've got that hooked under in between those two lugs, I'm just going to do up our other wing nut. So that's now holding our battery in position. So we can go ahead and do these up tight. Okay, so now that that's done up tight, we can go ahead and make the electrical connections and finish off this part of the install. So firstly, we're going to connect our positive lead that comes from the battery charger to our fuse holder, and we're going to do this, make sure that we do this before we've made any of the electrical connections to the battery. So just using an 8mm socket spanner, we're just going to connect that onto our MIDI fuse holder. And then we'll just do that up with an 8mm socket, snip that up tight, and then we can go and close that latch down. You'll hear that lock into position on the side. So we've got our harness down under the vehicle now from inside the tub canopy. It's now time to route it towards the front. So probably a good idea we keep our tape here holding these two harnesses together. And we're going to start by laying under there. We're going to go straight to the chassis rail and basically follow the chassis rail all the way till we're up under the engine in the engine bay. So I'm just going to lay under there now and I'll try and get some footage of up underneath where we're actually going. So I'm just laying under the vehicle now. We're at the back corner. I'm just going to show you where we're looking. So we come up over here into the outer layer of the tub. You can see daylight up there. We can actually see our harness up there. So I'm going to go ahead and reach for that harness up the very outside of the tub, grab it and pull through that cable. Okay, so we're just jumping in under the car now. You can see where our cable's coming down, and then if we go a little bit further you can see the chassis rail. So we're basically going to follow this route. So grabbing the end of our cable, we can see this harness here. So maybe just follow that till we get to the main chassis rail here. At this point, as we come down towards the shock absorbers, you can see there, that orange shock absorber, we're going to feed it over that center frame. I can grab okay, so I'm right above the wheel now. I'm going to reach up above the shock absorber, try and find our cable as we thread it over that subframe. You can see the big wiring harness still present here. So we're going to continue to follow that harness while we can. So just pull all of our cable through to that next spot. Keeping in mind that harness is what we're going to tie to as we make our way down using the cable ties supplied in the kit. So now I'm just going to lay in front of the rear wheel, grabbing that cable again, following the harness that runs straight over top of that shock absorber, making sure that we're following the harness that whole way so that we can come back down later with our cable ties attached to it. Coming up to the fuel tank now, still following that harness. I'm going to pull this section through now. So I've just got to halfway down the fuel tank. I'm going to pull the slide.
So now feeding back up exactly where I've come out, I'm going to continue to follow that harness. Make sure I can tie to it. I can actually reach on the other side of the chassis rail now, find it there. Still can feel the electrical harness, which is good. Still following that. Now at the front of the fuel tank, okay, so you can see where we are now. We're just in front of the fuel tank, and you can see the harness quite clear now where what I was talking about before. So this runs from all the way from the front to the back of the vehicle. So this is what we're going to tie to. So that's the main electrical harness. So now that we're at the front of the fuel tank, you can see exactly what I'm talking about. We're going to continue to follow that a short distance further till we get up under the engine bay. So continue to follow this. And now we can see, I can actually see the engine bay. So I'm just going to feed a little bit up there. Just enough so that I can jump up in the engine bay and then grab that cable and pull through our excess. Okay, so now that we've routed the cable all the way to the front, we're just going to go ahead and cable tie it into position. So first thing I'm going to tie to is this harness, electrical harness, Isuzu or Colorado harness that we've got here. Put a cable tie there. And that's going to get us across the back of the chassis rail where we can start to feel our electrical harness. And we're just going to cable tie down the way, following that existing electrical harness. So put two in there now. You can see the electrical harness right here. So I'm just going to place another cable tie around there. That's right above the shock absorber. So this is my third cable tie. At this point, I'll probably cut the lugs off the end of the cable ties, and then we'll move to in front of the rear wheel. In front of the rear wheel now, still following the same procedure, just following our electrical harness. I can reach up over the back, feel that harness there. It might be a bit hard to see, but I can actually reach in there. Just getting my cable tie to go around the existing harness. At this point, got it around there. I'm going to go around my harness. So there we go, I've got another one on. And that's probably the most difficult part, getting across that wheel arch. As we move down, we're following in between the fuel tank, you can see here, and our chassis rail. And I'm actually going up over the side steps now to reach my harness, and that's given me a lot more access than I would beside that fuel tank there. Reaching up over the chassis rail, I guess you'd say. I can feel my harness, the original harness. Okay, so maybe every 200-300 mil down this line, I want to try and apply a cable tie. I'm just working my way now towards the front of the fuel tank. Okay, so now you've got a good view of what we're doing, following this harness here. You can see this is the front of our fuel tank right here. I've got a few across the fuel tank, and now you can actually see what I'm doing here. So just going around this main electrical harness, grabbing our harness, and just following that down the line. Next one, just move a bit further down. another cable tie. Just spacing them out, just so that our harness can't move. So we're done in this section. We're back to the transfer case now and the cross member here. We'll move up to under the engine bay. So once we've got up to the front of the transfer case, we want to start securing the engine bay. An easy spot is straight over top of the front wheel. Now you can see our harness right there. You can also see existing Colorado or Isuzu harness right there. So we can actually tie to that. We've got good access through here. We can reach around these little rubber flaps that we can lift up, tie into our harness, and follow on that all the way up to our battery. So another 2 or 3 cable ties down that section. Keeping it away, I like to tie inside of that harness just to keep it away from the wheel. So yeah, we just sit our harness on the inside, put cable ties around, maybe 3 or 4 up to there, will get us to our battery. Okay, we've pushed our cable up into the engine bay, so I'm just going to reach down. I can see it there. Just pull up that excess so we can see we've got plenty of length on our cable getting us up in the engine bay. Now this is a Colorado, so we don't actually need the ignition wire tap. So we'll just take our tape off now and expose those 2 harnesses. The Holden Colorado doesn't have a variable voltage alternator. And you can see there's another one of our videos explains how to tell by looking at the negative terminal, but that's in another video. So basically we're just going to put a blank on here and cable tie it up. We're just going to put some heat shrink over, which will be included in the kit. But if this was an Isuzu Dmax, we would need to tap that into the fuse box, and that will be discussed in the digital instructions that will be sent to you when you purchase this kit. So for what we're going to do now, we've basically got our harness up into position. It's time to basically get our fuse holder, mount it onto here, and make our electrical connections now that we've run all of our cabling. Okay, so now we go ahead and attach our fuse holder that you would notice was in your packet of accessories. The reason we don't attach this beforehand is just makes it easier to route that cable up to the engine bay, and then we can simply attach it when we're up here. So just an 8mm socket, just take off that end bolt, and we're just going to attach it to our harness, our main harness that we've threaded up. We can go ahead and do this up now. And at this point, because we've routed all of our cables everywhere, we can start to make our electrical connections. So we're going to flick that down. So the easiest way is probably just to cable tie this to our hold down clamp. So just using some of the cable ties included in the kit. And you'll notice a fuse holder is labelled so that we know what it is down the track. Redarc main, so that's the main battery input to the Redarc. This one's already got some accessories there, by the looks. So that'll secure our charger fuse into position. Once that's done, we can attach it to our positive terminal. Now, if we take this cover off, that bit just pops off. There's a little release tab there just to give us a bit more room. Pop that away. We'll just release this little piece of plastic, and then we can go ahead and undo this 13mm nut. And then attach our positive straight to the positive terminal of the vehicle's battery. And that's going to power up our Redarc charger. Go ahead and do that connection up. Just being careful not to short this out on anything. We don't want to slip and touch the negative post there. And then we can go and reconnect our little piece of plastic. That just slides back on the tab. And then you can see these side clips that we just go and push back on just to hold that little guard back into position. So, and then we may need to take a little cut out of this just to allow our battery clamp to go back on. Alternatively, you could just put a cable tie around there just to hold that down to protect the main post. But we're just going to get a pair of cutters and just cut that side section out. It'll allow it to sit back down. So if we don't need this
ignition wire because it's on a Colorado, or even like an earlier model Isuzu Dmax before they had a variable voltage alternator. We just place this over, just covering it up. A little bit of heat shrink that'll be included in the kit, and with a cigarette lighter or some kind of heat source, you can just melt that down just to protect the end of the wire. It isn't a positive feed, so it's not a wire that's going to ever short out. It's purely a signal to the Redarc charger, so you don't have to be too concerned about it having any issues. But basically we're just trying to neaten it up basically, and we're just going to cable tie that excess down with our harness. Now we're going to make our positive connections first. So we've noticed that our fuse holders are out, so it's a good idea to just keep our fuse holders out at this point. And then we're going to basically start with our positive cables from the accessory sockets. So just make sure our cables are sitting in a nice routed position. And in this case we've got 8mm bolts with 13mm head on the top of our battery. So obviously each battery might be slightly different, but so we're going to start by going through these two. And then we're going to put our battery charger closest to the battery terminal. That's our high current lug. And it might be best to have one coming from this way, and two coming this way, just to spread out the load a little bit. And before we start on the negatives, we'll fully do up the positive lug. So this one's a 13mm, but that could change depending on the battery type and brand. The reason we do the positive first, it is safer. If I was to slip now and hit that casing, I haven't connected negative, so it's not going to short out, nothing's going to arc out. We're pretty safe now playing with the positives as far as shorting out goes. So always a good idea to do the positive first. And now we can go ahead and do the same thing with the negative. Same procedure, so we're starting with the smaller negatives. So we're going to do this one, our other set of sockets, the negative for it, and lastly our main earth for the charging system. So go ahead and do them up finger tight initially. Like so, and once we're happy with the way the cables are sitting, we can do these up. Once we've done that and we're fully happy with the connections to our battery, we can go ahead and insert our little 15-amp fuses into the accessory harness, and then that will actually liven up all of our sockets. So just place our fuses in. So that one's for our single socket at the back, which is actually marked on it, single socket, so you can tell which one is which. This one is for our dual socket at the front here, and you can see our voltmeter's already livened up. So in this case, you can choose any sockets you want, but this customer has gone for a voltmeter and a SIG socket, so he can tell instantly the battery voltage on this AGM, just 13 volts. Okay, now we can go and install our lid and cover our entire battery, make it secure. So this may change on different models, genuine tub, non-genuine tub, but we've just had to take a little cutout just for our lid, so you may have to do that as well. So that you can see that lid, I've just made it so it just goes straight in there, nice and flush, and now it's lined up our holes. So just give that a push. And I'll just get these finger tight for now, and these are included in the kit. So you've got 4 Allen key head bolts just to secure this. So once we've got them all finger tight with an Allen key, we can go around and do these up secure.
Okay, there we go. So the rear part of the battery install is fully complete now. We've got our battery box fully into position. So we've fully installed our dual battery system now in the rear of the tub. It's time to test the unit. So you'll notice we've put an AGM battery in this one, so we're in A profile. The whole system is actually isolated at the moment, and you can see the A profile light is just lightly flashing in the background there. So that will always be on, no matter what mode the charger's in, whether it's charging or not. That just shows that we've got power to the system. And if we had a lithium in there, we'd want the LI light to be flashing in lithium mode, but AGM profile is good, or A profile is good for an AGM battery. So we can see that initially is our first tester to see we've got power to the unit. Now what I'm going to go and do is start up the vehicle. We should see the vehicle light come on solid, and then the stage light will either be solid or flashing, and that just depends on how charged the battery is inside and therefore what mode the charger goes into. So I'll go and start the vehicle. So you can hear the engines running now, and you can see that has just happened. So we've got our vehicle light on saying, yep, the Redarc is charging via the vehicle, and the stage light is solid on, which means it's in bulk stage at the moment, charging that battery. As the battery gets to 100%, it'll start flashing. So that is our normal operation with the vehicle running, showing that the charger is actually functioning correctly. Now, if we do have a solar panel, whether that be portable or a solar panel on the roof, and we've had that plugged in, we'd want to see the solar light on. So I've got a portable blanket out in the sun. I'm just going to plug that into our Anderson plug at the front of the box here, which is labeled solar input. So this is an unregulated solar panel plugged directly into that port. And you'll see we've got our solar light on now. So that means that it's actually charging from solar and vehicle at the same time. Great thing about this unit is it does have green power priority, so it'll take as much from the sun as it can before it takes from the vehicle, but it'll make up the rest. If you're driving along, it'll make up the full 25 amps, taking as much from the sun and the remainder from the vehicle. So we can see it's functioning properly on both channels, solar and vehicle. What I'll do now is we'll go and turn off the vehicle. So now the vehicle has been turned off, you'll actually see a short time afterwards, and this can vary depending on how charged this battery is, how much the charger is actually putting out. The vehicle light will go off. So that has happened right now. So we're now isolated from the vehicle's main battery, which means anything we've got connected to this battery bank cannot possibly flatten our vehicle battery. So we're fully isolated. These are now two separate battery banks. We do still have solar pumping in. So even when the vehicle's isolated and the charger's isolating, it will still charge from solar. If I went to disconnect my solar now, which I've just done, pulled out that Anderson plug, the solar light has gone off and we're back into full isolation mode. So the charger's not operating at all. It's separated our two batteries and we're basically camping right now and using power from this battery. So there we go. That's how to test your system at the end, and a little rundown of how the Redarc charger works and what these lights refer to.